Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pharaohcast. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Thick Boy for giving these awesome pump covers to us. You can check out Thick Boy at Thick Boy Fit on Instagram. And in today's episode, we have a Nashville, Tennessee-based fitness coach since 1998, a trainer on ABC's Extreme Weight Loss television show, as well as the co-author of Kicking Ass After 50, Zane Griggs. You're going to love this episode. You're not going to want to miss it. Welcome to Pharaohcast, the official podcast of Pharaoh Fitness, where we build warriors, kings, and leaders both in and out of the gym. I'm your host, John Martin, founder of Pharaoh Fitness. Every month, we sit down with athletes, coaches, and fitness professionals to dive into their stories, their struggles, and the strategies that shaped their success. Don't forget to subscribe, follow, and like on all social media platforms. Links are in the description. So Zane, thank you so much for the show. Coming to the show. We have a bunch of questions to ask you. We want to just dive right in. So first thing I wanted to ask, Zane, you've been a coach for over 20 years. Is there anything you believed in the early parts of your career that maybe now looking back at it, you sort of changed your mind on some stances?
There's several things.
Yes.
Actually, there's a list of them, actually. And going back early on, I mean, I think that's when we start working with people, that's when the lessons really begin, because that's when you get the feedback. You see what works maybe it works for your first 3 people, and then number 4 and 5, oh, that's not working so well with their goals and their diet. So I've even changed in the last 5 years, I would say. And I would challenge any coach to understand that they need to keep digging into the nuance of what they're telling people, and that think about if your understanding of what you're saying, there isn't some nuance or some adjustment to what you're saying for the last 5 or 6 years, you might want to revisit your ideas and see if there's some way that they need to be challenged and make sure they're not tested. But some of the big ones would be, really, I was big on low carb for a long time, for 20 plus years. Yeah. I did personally and then recommended intermittent fasting and fasted workouts for probably 10 to 12 years. And I put those together many times. It was just, it was not, to me, looking from the outside in, what I understood at the time, that was the approach I thought I could use to predict an outcome with the least amount of downside. And now I see more downside and risk with those approaches than I do predictability. And so I've shifted away from low carb. I've shifted away from a regular intermittent fasting or fasting type schedule or fasted workouts because of the impact on stress hormones and the downstream impact that has on issues like thyroid, sex hormone production, and even blood sugar control. And so I think there's more risk with those approaches than benefit at this time.
Okay, awesome. You talked about the nuances. So like originally you thought like, okay, these would be great approaches to get, the most maximum value out of it.
Basically.
Right, exactly right. And then so you sort of started diving into it a little bit deeper and started noticing like the nuances, like the blood sugar and how important carbs play a role in that. And
I actually hit a wall myself with stress. So it's like my late 40s and I'm hitting this, like I'm not recovering. My blood sugar's a little high. From the stress hormone, which I didn't realize at the time. Thyroid was struggling. It was in range, but not in functional ranges, if you know what I mean, not optimal ranges, but it was kind of teetering. There were some issues there on looking at blood work, and I noticed I wasn't recovering, wasn't sleeping well. I'm like, what is going on? I think I'm cranking, pulling the levers on all these metabolic stressors.
Yeah.
And it finally hit me that I was over leveraging metabolic stress. And so that's when I had to step back and rethink things like these things are impacting my recovery, my sleep, my progress, my energy level, even my mood was like just a little bit edgy, more edgy. And you would ask my family, they'd say I was pretty edgy during that time.
Right.
and then looking at my blood work, I'm like, this is not adding up the way I thought it would. What do I need to do? And it took aging into it, where it's like my body didn't have the same resilience it had when I was maybe in my late 30s or early 40s to withstand some of that stress. And then as I got older, it's like, oh, just because I could doesn't mean I should have.
Right. Zane, I think I'm sort of like approaching that situation because my sleep, I'll go to bed at 9 p.m. and I'll wake up at 6 and I don't feel recovered. I don't feel rested. I'm waking up constantly throughout the middle of the night. I have trouble sleeping. And I think it's because of all the stressors, through my, and maybe I do need to dial it back, maybe start eating a little bit more balanced, or maybe look at my caffeine intake, right? Maybe reduce some of the caffeine before, 2 p.m. or whatever it may be. But sleep, you're exactly right. That's something we need to look at and start, analyzing what's affecting our sleep, our recovery. Because it's a lot of people focus on the diet and the gym, right?
Right.
And the sleep is just as important. So, yeah, absolutely. And, as mentioned earlier, you had worked with some clients on ABC's Extreme Weight Loss television show. And I wanted to know a little bit, what are some of the differences you saw working with those clients as you did like working with like regular average Joe clients?
Well, that was definitely a different situation. So I would just so everyone understands, to be clear, because if they watch the show, you're not going to see me. I was the one. So they had two contestants, one on season 1 and one on season 4 that lived in Nashville, or in the Nashville area.
Yeah.
And so I would with season 1, I spent the entire season with that guy, meeting him 5 or 6 days a week. Yeah. Sometimes at his home, sometimes at a gym, coming and weighing him, reporting to the head trainer, reporting on what was going on. Season 4, I came in kind of at the tail end. He wasn't looking like he was going to meet his goal of losing half his body weight. So the last, say, 4 months or so, I came in and helped him kind of get across that finish line. So I'm kind of behind the scenes, but seeing them every day.
Right.
And so that what we see these were people who weighed anywhere from 400, 500 plus pounds.
Ooh, yeah.
So there's a lot of emotional eating going on there. Much of the issue was emotional issues, were psychological in some sense. In they're eating stress, they're eating their feelings, and it was a type of they were self-medicating. Yeah. And so to get that size, that's really what has to happen. So that's where I think the biggest shift was for me, to see this is not as much physiological initially as it is psychological, emotional, and that was a big learning curve for me to really address those things and understand why they didn't want to get healthy enough to change simple changes with their diet, like to the point where I could go over to this guy's house and make food for him, like just brown rice, some chicken, some veggies, things like that, and he wouldn't eat it. It would just sit in the fridge and rot. But this was early on. This was like the first month or two. I do all these things, and he's still chowing down on KFC and pizza and stuff. And it's like every week, every day. There was no shift, and I didn't understand the psychological connection to what was happening until I really got in there and started. I mean, that made it probably that was one of the biggest eye openers for that, and how different it was from my typical client who's like a professional who's trying to optimize, maybe lose 20 pounds, maybe they're seeing some, so that was huge.
Yeah. How do you, so again, like fitness, a lot of it is, playing like with psychology and really analyzing the mind. How do you get someone to shift their mindset from going, KFC, McDonald's to, okay, maybe I do need to do, some chicken and rice and eat healthier?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know that I want to write the book on that one. That's not my area of expertise. It was an area where I have some experience, but it was not. I would not call myself an expert on that level of really mindset shift, because it was tug of war. It was tug of war. It was like first understanding why, and over time, some of that starts coming out. Like, where is the struggle here? Where is this? What are you medicating? And that's stuff that comes out when they're ready to share it as you build trust. It's not something you can just sit them down with. Okay, come on, I know this is psychological. What's going on? And they're not going to like open themselves to you. So there's a building of trust there that they know what they tell you is not going to be leveraged against them or openly shared with a lot of people. And but it really was also not giving up, like showing up consistently, not giving up on them, believing in them.
Yeah.
And letting them know, hey, look, there's a solution here. You can do this. Here's what we're working with. This is the pace we have. And so they had a little bit more of a clear path to see forward, because many times they are so deep in it, they don't see the way out, and they don't believe it themselves.
Right.
So I think that was it. It was building trust, then building belief, and a fairly clear path to the desired outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you become a fitness coach, a lot of people don't mention, the whole, you're a friend, you do have to dive into these, psychological wounds. What are you trying to heal? What hurt you in the past? What are you coping for? And as you'd mentioned, it takes time to build those relationships and really get to the root cause about that. Yeah, no, that's excellent. And Zane, I know you position yourself as sort of like the men over 40, like expert or specialist. What would be some 3 non-negotiables you would give to men in their 40s or 50s that, these are non-negotiables for a successful transformation?
Well, with this age group, and I've been there, I'm 55, so I've been in that age group for a bit. I didn't stumble in, but it's been, and that's where most of my clients have shifted to over the last decade or so. Mm-hmm. We got to get eyes on what's going on below the surface. So I look blood work. We got to see some labs to see what's going on hormonally with like fasting insulin, not just typical blood sugar, but fasting insulin, thyroid, sex hormones. Let's see what's testosterone's going on. Testosterone and a few of the other sex hormone binding globulin, which is more of a stress indicator. And I'd really like, see eyes on cortisol if possible. Yeah. Because many times what we're dealing with is a stress hormone fighting sex hormone production, thyroid, because of dietary approaches, stress from work. Maybe there's some family stress as well. Families are stressful, let's face it. So everything, they're good, they're productive stressors, just like workouts are. But they all have to be managed. And so I would say, let's get eyes on what's going on below the surface hormonally, so we know, and we have a baseline for when we're making progress in those things. And then understanding that the way they approach fitness and getting healthy should not be a mirror image of what they did in their 20s, when they could just go all out, crank it, beat themselves up into being fitter, right? It's not punitive, and it should not be overly restrictive because of these other stressors like work and so forth. And recovery, as we mentioned earlier, has to be deliberate. And so we're more strategic. And so a non-negotiable is, we're thinking about this in terms of every stressor in your life, your career, your family, and your workout. And we're balancing those things in a way that's strategic, not punitive. So we're not trying to be restrictive and beating ourselves into fitness where we are fueling ourselves properly, and being deliberate again about recovery and sleep, because that's a vital component. It's a foundational component.
Absolutely.
And I say the third one is really, we have to come back to a mindset again of thinking about it's long term. Like, what we're doing now is going to impact if you're 45, it's going to impact 55, 65, 75. We need to think long term, not I need to be 20 pounds lighter by this thing. It's like that okay. That's a nice goal.
Right.
But we're not going to create long-term problems for a short-term goal.
Like crash dieting.
Right. Like crash dieting, the starvation thing, it's just or overtraining. And so that's not just action, that's also the mindset of we're thinking about longevity here. We're thinking about health span,
Yep.
so that your health all the way through through your career, through your retirement, you get to enjoy yourself healthy.
Yeah.
Healthy at 70 and 80, healthy and mobile and active.
Yeah. Zane, a lot of people I work with, they think fitness is a hobby. You do it for 3 months, you achieve your goal weight, and then it's all good. You go back to your own
Right. You get
lifestyle.
freeze-dried that way, and you just get to keep going. Yeah.
Right. And I keep telling them, I go, well, fitness is, it's a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
It's not, you just do this for 3 months and you're good. You can do your vacation and, you're going to return back to your old ways. Right. No, that's really awesome. Zane, I was wondering, the carnivore diet, does that inherently cause any like stress on like with cortisol? And is that kind of like why maybe it's good to add carbs back into a highly meat diet, or kind of explain the effects of like the carnivore diet on someone's body, and then why maybe you would recommend, hey, let's maybe add in some carbs and see.
Yeah, it's not even a maybe. Just to give someone a little heads up on the solution. It's not a maybe. It's a definite.
It's a definite.
Carnivore on the outside sounds like, oh yeah, we're eliminating the glucose. It's a great elimination diet, so it can eliminate some toxins in your food, things like this. But we have to think again about the long-term issues with something that completely eliminates a macronutrient, which is carbohydrates.
Mm-hmm.
Because glucose, that's where people are having issues with blood sugar. Oh, my blood sugar's too high. Oh, my doc says I have to cut back. Okay, eliminate glucose didn't cause the problem. Most of the issues that people are dealing with when they come to carnivore are related to some sort of metabolic disease. Some may just have a gut issue. Some, maybe it's autoimmune. I understand they're trying to calm down some inflammation. But most with metabolic disease, that's a hormone imbalance. It's not, in my opinion, it's not because you ate too much sugar. And I know that sounds like a revolutionary idea, but it really, we've demonized two major macronutrients that humans have always used with or consumed without issue until we got to the 20th century, and that is glucose and saturated fat. Our livers make glucose. When we don't eat enough, our liver makes glucose. So if it's a toxin, why is our liver making it as our primary fuel source? Saturated fat is when our bodies turn an excess carbohydrate that we don't need into fat for storage. Yep. It converts it into a saturated fat. It's palmitic acid. So it's a saturated fat. Our body makes primary sources of fuel, saturated fat and glucose. These are not toxins. These are not things that cause disease. These are our primary fuels. So to get back to your original question,
yes.
The issues of the carnivore diet, when we eliminate glucose, our bodies now have to make it through a process called gluconeogenesis.
Yes.
That happens in our liver. Initially, we elevate glucagon, which is a stress hormone, which elevates gluconeogenesis, and that's happening on some level, like between meals, on a small degree. But we're talking about really leveraging this process. So glucagon comes up for many people, depending on how they approach it. If they add in some fasting, especially, you're going to see cortisol elevate as well. But glucagon is enough, and so that stress hormone being elevated is what creates, basically, you start breaking down tissue to make glucose. Usually lactate is there, but it's protein and fat. So there's glycerol molecule in fat, not the fat cell itself, but the glycerol molecule in the fat to make glucose. And this is your primary source of glucose. The problem is when you have elevated stress hormone like that and you're making your own glucose, your body thinks it's in a low battery mode or a starvation response. It basically thinks it's winter, or there's a famine, or there's some lack. It doesn't know that you're doing it intentionally.
Right.
It doesn't know the difference between that or you're stuck in the middle of somewhere with no food and all you can find is meat and fat. Yeah. You don't have glucose.
Yeah.
So what it does, it downregulates other hormones to help you, what they call adapt.
Right.
They say adapt. It's adaptation to keep you from dying, but it's not an optimal one. And so the immediate change within a matter of weeks, you see a downregulation of thyroid conversion of T4 to T3, which is your active thyroid hormone.
Okay.
So thyroid comes down, which will impact your metabolism. So slow down your metabolism. It will also impact testosterone, or actually any sex hormone production.
Yeah.
Because we make sex hormones out of cholesterol in our gonads, essentially,
Right,
and T3 impacts that conversion. And then with the elevated stress hormone, we also have, like, if, for instance, cortisol is elevated, then you have that also has a direct impact on reproductive hormones production. So you have a lower metabolism, you have an increase in the stress hormone, again, telling your body there's not enough. And what we see with what I've seen with many people, keto, carnivore, is they end up having, and the issue I had with just low carb and a lot of intermittent fasting was elevated blood sugar, because the body is trying to preserve a certain level of blood sugar for the brain and other tissues that really need it. Brain, eyes, parts of the kidney, testes, they need glucose for the speed at which they have these processes, right?
Right.
And so when you have you'll see people's blood sugar on these diets come out of range from 95, 100, 110, 150, 120. I had the author of the Keto Diet Revolution, wrote it with his name is Brad Kearns. He wrote it with Mark Sisson, who's like Mark's Daily Apple. He has Primal Kitchen Foods. That was his baby.
Wow. Okay.
So they co-wrote this in 2018. While he's writing it on the keto diet, he was waking up with blood sugar at 120 milligrams per deciliter in the morning. And this guy is super healthy. I mean, he was a nationally ranked triathlete back in his prime. And even at 60, he's masters track athlete, number 1 and number 2 spot on like high jump and the 400.
Wow.
So this guy's healthy.
Yeah.
But he had a blood sugar of 120 on the keto diet. His body is trying to preserve glucose for his brain and other tissues that need it by suppressing insulin, elevated the stress hormone. This is getting a little technical, but basically, your body creates insulin resistance to preserve that glucose for the tissues that need it, because you're not eating enough.
Right.
That's not a healthy state. It doesn't matter why you have elevated blood glucose out of normal ranges.
Yeah.
What matters is you have it, and so if it's chronically elevated all day, then you're gonna have the same issues with someone it's chronically elevated because of diabetes or fatty liver disease. Right. So if two cars crash at an intersection, maybe who knows? Who cares why? Right? Is it the light went out? And I wasn't paying attention. Right? Yeah. They crash. The collision has the damage. The damage.
Right.
Why it happened doesn't impact the damage. The damage is done.
Right. Yeah.
We figure out why to prevent it.
Yeah.
But the damage is still done. And that's the thing, is we have elevated glucose from these, and I have more and more of them in my DMs and comments all the time.
Yeah.
My blood sugar's high. We added carbs. It lowers the stress hormone. Now their body says, "Oh, we have a supply of glucose now that we can use. We don't have to make it."
Yeah.
And their blood sugar levels out and comes back to normal ranges.
Yeah.
So that's a long-winded answer, but it's complex because it doesn't make sense from a outside in. Right. But when you consider that your body's hormonally reacting to everything you do, from how you eat, how you move, and how you sleep.
Not everybody knows that, right?
Most people don't.
Yeah.
Including many experts.
Right.
So
exactly. So, everybody for the longest time, carbs are the enemy, right?
Yes. And I was one of them. Well, to some level. Yeah. To some level, it's like, if you're trying to reverse disease, probably don't have too much of that. Right. Well, we manage it. Now they make up the majority of the energy that I bring in my body.
Right.
Well, some of what you just said is interesting, because some of it explains my experience over the last couple of months. John can tell you that one of the things I did early on was like, okay, I did like no carbs unless it was like stuff and vegetables, you know what I mean? And I did no sugar, wouldn't eat anything that had sugar in it, which I still don't. I don't need it. I feel better without it, but that's another story. Mm-hmm. But I went months, lost a lot of weight, cool. But I did notice, man, I'm not getting stronger in the gym. And I'm also noticing that even though some meals I would have, my blood sugar should not have jumped. It did after meals. I checked that post-prandial, and it's like, man, I was 95 before the meal. Why am I 130? What did I eat that caused that spike? Because I have no glycemics in this meal. This doesn't make sense. And then eventually I got to a point where it was like, you know what? Like I'm sore for days. Like, let me add some carbs. And I added carbs on lifting days in the form of this multigrain bread that has some protein in it and stuff. It's really good. and just having that like before the gym, after the gym. And then, you know what, I actually ate a turkey sandwich that night with it. Like I went a little hard with carbs that I wouldn't have had before that. And that's been the norm in my diet, predominantly on the lifting days. Some days I'm not, but like I'm not anti-glycemic carbs. I'll have a little bit of potatoes, and my blood sugar does not spike over 114 on any given day, no matter what. Even I ate a candy bar, it didn't go up to the 130s or 140s. It's like it's stabilized. My blood sugar is more stable now by having by having carbs.
Yeah,
when I was having none, and like. I mean, I'm on a journey to reverse type 2 diabetes. Yes, I am on the meds, but I'm weaning myself off and seeing no change. If anything, I'm actually seeing improvement of my blood sugar over the last handful of days getting off of it. So that's I think some of what you just talked about is sort of helping explain what's been happening for me and why.
The morning, that dawn effect, that morning elevated blood sugar that people who are diabetic or have fatty liver or some other form of metabolic disease experience is from these elevated stress hormones. Is not because you ate food 10 hours before when you went to dinner and then went to bed, and it's not still there. It's elevated in the morning. It goes up in the morning because of the release of, and we all have some level of release of cortisol in the morning to wake us up and get a little blood sugar going. But because of the metabolic syndrome going on, yours is exaggerated, and then it can go to 120, 180. I know people 300 in the first thing in the morning, haven't eaten for hours. That is because the stress hormones telling the liver spit out more glucose. So it's a dysfunction of a normal response, which should be much smaller. So why approach metabolic syndrome, which already has the elevated stress hormone, which already has, believe it or not, you are releasing fat from your fat cells. There is a high level of fat oxidation, and there is a high level of gluconeogenesis in metabolic syndrome. All of these things are happening. It's an excessive amount of energy being released, and it's not all being metabolized properly. But you have the elevated blood sugar. Why would we double down on that pathology with a diet that stimulates the same hormones, not to the same degree, but they still stimulate and rely on the same hormones to provide energy? Why don't we bring those hormones down with a diet that tells the body, hey, you don't need those elevated stress hormones. Let's improve the food quality coming in and improve the metabolic efficiency, so we're making ATP, the cellular energy, more efficiently without as many toxins interfering and not having this alarm to the body that, hey, we're in an energy deficiency, crank up the stress hormones, let's release more fat, let's release more glucose all at once, and flooding the system with a sense sort of energy toxicity. Too much energy at once. Let's reverse the hormone situation, not amplify it with a diet. Now, yes, does it work? Yeah, short term. Because we see a lot of people work because it cleans up their diet a little bit. Before they were eating whatever came across them. Now they've got a clear line, oh, I'm only eating meat. So their gut issues clear up, maybe because they have less toxins in there. There's fewer toxins coming through. And some of them, they eat less because it kills their appetite.
Right.
And the stress hormones are going. But the what I've seen, and then you start looking at gut health long term, I have more and more people coming to me and talking to even keto and carnivore coaches now, people who have coached this, who have advanced degrees, who are saying, I was having all these issues and I was masking, I was pretending like it was, I just dieted harder, or I was trying to figure out why this was happening, but I was already in this position where I'm coaching people, I have this reputation, and it got to be too much. And they're saying, here, look at my blood work, look at my gut tests. I was a mess until they shifted their diet.
Yeah.
And these are the coaches. These are people with PhDs, MDs.
Yeah.
And they're starting to see it. It's great. They're starting to speak up, but they were scared to because they do get attacked.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Another interesting thing I want to talk about is seed oils, right?
Sure.
So I had saw one of your clips. I think you were doing a podcast and you guys were talking about seed oils, and something very interesting was brought up that I think it was either Cisco when they were manufacturing the oil for cooking. It originally was lubricant for machines, right? And so, that's a lot of information that, I didn't know that. And so I'm starting to dig more into seed oils and like how it causes inflammation in the body. And it's really just not a good option. Has there been any compelling arguments against your stance about someone saying, hey, maybe seed oils are not as bad for you, or no, they don't cause any inflammation. Have you gotten any kind of pushback on that?
I get pushback on it weekly.
Is there
a
any?
lot of people disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
And I think even early on, I didn't understand how. I just saw the correlation with, as these oils came into our diet over the 20th century, that's when we saw metabolic disease increase. Because like in 1901, our obesity rate was 1%. Even in 1930, type 2 diabetes impacted 0.3% of the population. So we didn't have these issues in 1900. We also didn't have seed oils in 1900. We didn't have ultra-processed food in 1900. So at the very least, let's agree, ultra-processed food has brought this is the biggest change to our diet that's brought on this level of disease. I think seed oils are one of the bigger components of it. I'm not saying it's the only one, but I think it's one of the biggest levers.
Yeah.
So the arguments against, I'm not giving credence to these. What I'm saying is the arguments are, when we do tests, trials, studies, they lower LDL or total cholesterol. That's one of the arguments. The other one is, we don't see, when we put these in the diet, we don't see all of these inflammation markers flying up like you would see on, significant. Or those are only mouse studies, or these are my mouse or rat studies where you saw such a dramatic change between, with the seed oils. We have a huge correlation. They'll say, well, correlation doesn't create causation.
Yeah.
But you can't have causation without correlation. You have to have a correlation.
Right.
And so a big correlation like that means look deeper. And so there were early theories about the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, which that one really didn't pan out. It took off in the media, but it didn't really pan out to be that valid. And people still think it's an issue. And there's not always some major inflammatory marker coming in, but what they don't understand is they don't have a control group. They're taking two people from, let's say, from the American public. They're two groups of people who've been on the American diet, and they say, we're going to put them on a diet, and we're going to add some more seed oils to this diet, but this one we're going to keep on saturated fat. You don't have a clean control group. These people have been, it takes at least 3 years to reduce the amount of stored seed oils in your body fat down to a normal level. Ideally, like we go back to, like, say, 1850, the amount of the polyunsaturated fat, which is what these oils are, that would be in our stored body fat was between like maybe 2 and 5%. And that's what we see in indigenous populations where they don't have processed food.
Yeah.
So there was a study done where they took biopsies. They looked at from 1959 to 2009. They saw an increase in that time period of the amount of these polyunsaturated fats in the adipose tissue, in the fat tissue of humans, in the Americans. 1959 to 2009 increased from 9% to 21.5%. So it's increasing, it's stored in our body. We don't make this. We don't store fat as PUFA. We store it as saturated fat, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So for it to be stored in our tissues, well, it's because it's coming from our diet, because we went from these supplementing no fat in our diet to now they're supplementing 80% of the added fat and 20% of total calories coming from these seed oils. That's a significant change. So now we're storing it. So to get a control group, you'd need a 3 or 4 year shakeout of those people not eating any seed oils to get that out of their system.
Yeah.
And then you can compare something. You can compare. But now they're probably giving them a diet that probably has less seed oils than the normal diet that they eat at home.
Yeah.
So there's not a real clear control group in these studies.
Yeah.
When there was a guy, Chris Ramsden, who reevaluated 2 major heart studies, the Minnesota coronary experiment and the Sydney diet heart study. In both cases, they supplemented polyunsaturated fats and reduced the intake of saturated fat in their experiment group.
Yeah.
They did reduce cholesterol, but in the case with like the Sydney diet heart study, as they the group that had the polyunsaturated fat, I think it was corn oil instead of butter, they had corn oil or margarine. Even though their cholesterol dropped, they had higher rates of all-cause mortality and cardiovascular disease. In the Minnesota diet experiment, they definitely showed we reduced cholesterol, but there was no reduction in all-cause mortality. There was one of the groups actually, I found, I'm sorry, I can't remember which one of those 2 studies, but for every like 20-point reduction in the cholesterol, they actually increase the rate of all-cause mortality.
Wow.
So that stuff doesn't get published. This guy, he had to reevaluate this because there was data from those studies that was not previously published because it didn't fit the narrative.
Yeah.
So we have a manipulation of data.
Right.
Where I see it, the biggest issue it causes in the production goes back to the production of ATP. When we get these, they're very oxidative. They're very inflammatory oils. So they create reactive oxygen species or oxidative stress. So basically, like, we think of free radicals. Reactive oxygen species are a type of free radical that cause damage and inflammation. And this takes place in the mitochondria. And they create reactive oxygen species. And so this oxidative stress within the mitochondria, and that impacts the mitochondrial membrane. This is getting a little technical, but this is where ATP is produced. This is where our cellular energy.
The powerhouse.
The powerhouse. This is where we turn food energy into cellular energy we can actually use. And so those oils create that oxidative stress in the mitochondrial membrane and this little phospholipid in there called the cardiolipin. Wow. And so basically, this is what has a negative impact on ATP efficiency. So the amount of ATP produced for the same amount of oxygen would be reduced. And it also impairs or damages the mitochondrial DNA. So what we see is reduced ATP. We see, which means less, basically, we're losing electrons from the electron transport chain, which is where the energy is produced. So you have less energy being held on, it's kind of leaking away. And we see more signals because of the damage to that cardiolipin in the mitochondrial membrane. We see more signals for apoptosis. Essentially, we have too much inflammation. There's too much damage. Shut down. It's like cell suicide. So it shuts down the mitochondria. And with the damage to the DNA, you see more apoptosis and less mitophagy, which is a reproduction of mitochondria. So we see less ATP, more cell death, mitochondrial death, and less mitochondrial reproduction. All that impacts ATP.
Yeah.
Your body has when your body starts producing less ATP, that's when we see the reaction of, hey, we need more energy. What are we going to do? The brain's going, hey, red alert. These cells, we can't go more than a few minutes without some of these cells starting to die.
Yeah.
So that's when we elevate the stress hormone to release more fat and more sugar from the liver. More fat from fat storage, sugar from the liver. And that's when we see the beginning of the increase of the glucagon and the cortisol, which is the beginning of these metabolic diseases. Yeah. It comes down to how efficiently are we making ATP.
Wow. Yeah. So really the only counter arguments against your stance are built off of flawed design studies, right?
Correct.
And so that's, it's really important to look at, how these studies are designed and look at the control groups or the sample size. And you really ask yourself, is this something you can extrapolate data reliably from?
That is a big question.
A lot of people just say, well, they're the doctors, there's the scientists, they wrote the white paper, it's got to be true, right? And so, a lot of people don't understand, a lot of these studies are funded by, big companies, right?
That want an outcome.
Exactly. We're going to design it to favor us. Yeah, exactly. So it's very important to really do your research and really dig into that. Zane, another hot topic I wanted to get to you about was the sugar diet. So I've seen you doing some kind of experiment with the sugar diet. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and kind of what kind of problems you were trying to solve with that? And just tell us more about it.
So I saw people talking about a lot on social media, and I was already at this point, it shifted away from low carb and been in a higher carb diet for probably close to, at that point, 2 years or so. And so I understood carbohydrates and food quality and so forth. And about looking at this diet and seeing and understanding what it does, it basically creates something called mitochondrial uncoupling, which basically means you're taking energy and you're still making ATP, but some of it's being used just to burn off heat. So you're burning off an excessive amount of calories. Some of it's going to ATP, some of it's just going to heat, body heat. So it's being wasted. So you go through a lot of fat because you're not really taking in fat, so you're not replacing it. And the intake of the glucose, one, stimulates thyroid. If someone had lower thyroid, it's going to tell thyroid production go up. Yeah. Metabolism rate, metabolic rate actually goes up. And it stimulates some some actions in the mitochondria that just cause again, increased usage of fat to make heat. So you're basically wasting fat.
Yeah.
But there's but I see the people who are doing it, they're doing a lot of things I wouldn't eat. They're eating a lot of candy. They're drinking a lot of soda. They're doing things that I just have no desire to eat at all. And I wouldn't want to put my body because of all the other things that come with it. So I'm like, I'm going to try to recreate this sugar diet using food that doesn't offend me, food that I'm willing to digest.
Yeah.
And so it was with basically recreate the sugar diet with fruit juice, honey. Not that any of those things were off limits for other people to do it, but I want to be exclusively fruit juice, honey, starches like sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, and then eliminating the fat. And then it's almost like a fat cycling diet. Yeah. And then you manage the protein intake depending on where you are in the diet. And what's important to understand, because I've spoken to the guy who created this diet. He's not the most famous person that people have seen talking about it. But reading how he designed it, you do the extreme part of this diet for maybe 4 or 5 days in a row, tops. Okay. And then you cycle back out, bring in some fat, bring in a little more protein, bring those nutrients back in, reset the system, and then you can dive back into it if you need to. Because any kind of extreme diet, you start adapting to it within 3, 4, 5 days, and you start losing the impact of that, the real initial impact, and your hormones start shifting to accommodate it, and that's when we have a problem. So he has you cycling in and out of this before that adaptation happens, and so it's very effective. And he trains bodybuilders, like getting them on stage with this diet,
the cycling,
the cycling of it, and getting them down to like 2 or 3%, 4% body fat, whatever it is. For women, obviously a little higher, but the point is he uses this to shred them of fat and build muscle.
Yeah.
But appropriately. It's not just set it and forget it.
Yeah.
So that's something to understand. But so I was basically, well, let's see how this works because this would be a very interesting tool and it would help me better understand a very high carb, low fat approach with a moderate protein part in there. And so I did probably 6 or 7 weeks of experimenting, cycling through this approach with, again, fruit juice, honey, not candy, right? Maybe a little chocolate here and there, which I enjoy. Dark chocolate. It's got good stearic acid in there, which is good. It's a good fatty acid. And so that was kind of, so I did it. I leaned out. I dropped. I had a DEXA scan. I had some other scans on the book ended of it. DEXA scan in the middle, just to kind of see how things looked. Over that 7-week period, I lost about 6 pounds of fat. Said increased maybe a pound of muscle, which is probably glycogen in the muscle, right? Yeah. More fluid, because carbohydrates hydrate, right? You know, so more glycogen in the muscle, which I felt immediately. Felt immediate pump coming in, and I did blood work at the end of it, which we can get into if we need to. But all my blood sugar numbers looked amazing because I continued even through that sugar diet period with a lower fat, higher carb intake. Low fat, like maybe 15% of calories.
Okay.
And carbs at 65%.
Okay. Oh, nice.
But through that, my wife did it with me and cycling it out. And she dropped 10 pounds that she'd been struggling to drop for a long time. She'd been low carb for a while. She's very active. She works out.
Yeah.
We're both hormonally optimized, you know, in our 50s. And so doing all the right things, but this shredded 10 pounds in 6 weeks.
Love it. Yeah.
And she felt great. The thing is, the energy level is up. And she didn't do it to the same extreme, as many days in a row without certain cycling in and out of that I did, because she listened to her body.
Yeah.
And so women are a little different. They handle stress a little differently than we do, and we can accommodate that. But basically, it's like, what can I learn from this?
Yeah.
And maybe as a quick fat loss, and then how do we stabilize? Yeah. You know, if someone wanted to do that or use it as a tool, as a strategy.
Well, I'm assuming that there's some kind of calorie deficit involved in this too,
actually, you end up you have a metabolic rate increase. Many people end up eating more calories.
Yeah. Oh wow!
Oh, wow. Okay.
You end up eating more calories.
Burn more calories at rest because of this metabolic.
You
increase.
do. You burn it. Yeah. There's a little hormone. I guess it's probably a bad word. Probably not hormone, but it's FGF22, which is stimulated through the fructose coming in, high level of fructose.
Yeah.
So most of the carbs you have coming in have some sort of fructose on board, which is why I use a lot of fruit and fruit juice and honey.
Yeah.
You want the fructose in there to stimulate this enzyme or it's an enzyme or hormone.
Yeah.
That stimulates this mitochondrial uncoupling. So
Yeah.
you're burning heat. You're turning fat into heat.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
since you're taking very little fat in, your body's like, well, we need fat for structure. We need fat for hormone production. We need some fat for energy.
Yeah.
And so it's using your body fat very,
Yeah.
very rapidly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, I mean, you could tell by the numbers, my wife, 10 pounds in 7 weeks. That's not too extreme.
Yeah. That's not like crazy.
No,
Yeah.
no. And
Yeah.
it was fat. It was
Yeah.
mostly fat. Like
No,
no,
that's
no loss of
amazing. If
muscle.
it was truly body fat,
Yeah.
that's incredible. That's
Mine,
great.
according
yeah.
to the DEXA scale, yeah, it was a 10 pound, I saw 7 pound loss, 1 pound increase, which is the glycogen.
Yeah.
Again, cycling in and out to hang on to, with some of the protein and the fat variations.
And that was just with the diet change, right?
only diet change.
Yeah.
We were even traveling several times in there where we had to like, oh, we can't eat this diet. We're traveling. We're out of town for 4 or 5 days. So we used that as our cycle out. Came back. Sometimes we'd lost weight. Sometimes the same weight. Come back in, take off, picked up where we left off.
Yeah.
And still had the same result in that 6 or 7 week period with 2 or 3 out of town trips.
Yeah.
Where I'm eating whatever's available, wherever I was doing a podcast or doing some sort of event. And I'm like, okay, this is not what I expected.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot from it, and taught me not to fear, which I hadn't at that point. Like I said, I'd been high carb for a while, but really not. It led me to keep pushing that envelope.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And to understand where the boundaries are and how our body responds to maybe what you could call an extreme imbalance in certain macronutrients, and then also how to find balance in something that's sustainable.
Yeah.
So we kind of have to push the boundaries to know where the sustainable middle ground is.
Exactly right. So Zane, that brings me to my next question. With such a large following, how do you prevent some of these idiots from seeing what you do and just taking it to an extreme level where, they end up doing something hurtful, do you tell them, hey, try at your own risk, or like you try to give them kind of like some guardrails, or how do you can you prevent people
You
from—
can't.
Yeah. So
So there's stupid people everywhere. And so, but I made it very clear how I did it. I had a map of how I made a little map of like, I call it my summer body diet. I got it in my stand store, and they can get that. They can look at here's how I recommend doing it. Here's what I would do and why.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to know how I did it, it's there. It's mapped out in writing. It's in my video.
Yeah.
But I can't keep people any more than when I was promoting low carb and intermittent fasting. I did more harm with that than I could with this. And you still see idiots. I know I have people raging against me, calling me like I'm a shill for pharma, and I'm the devil, and I'm Satan, and I'm a quack, and I have just some influencer who has no experience in coaching.
Yeah.
Because I'm telling people to eat not the sugar diet, because I'm telling people to eat fruit and potatoes and white rice in their diet with a moderate amount of protein.
Yeah.
And lean protein.
Yeah.
Lean protein, fruit, potatoes.
How dare you?
I am the devil. And I could show you all of the other nasty things I've been called. Like I'm on money. Like, Lambo out front from the banana lobby.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly,
come on.
right? Yeah.
So it's funny how people respond and get visceral, very viscerally charged and triggered by someone who challenges their belief system.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we have the problem. I think where experimentation has been lost, because suddenly our diet has become our flag. It's become our social media handle. We got the T-shirt. We go to the conference. We get the book. We have these.
It's our identity.
Yeah, it's the identity, and we have these people we look up to that whatever they say, it's got to be them. I have people. You should talk to so and so. You should. I was like, I do. I've interviewed him, or he's interviewed me. We know each other. I disagree. This is why. This is not. I'm not. You can drop his name until you can explain it. You have no argument.
Yeah.
But the ideology becomes more important than the outcome. And that's where we've come to a problem with, I'm going to say it, with keto, with carnivore, because, and this has kind of exploded with me this last fall, where I started getting a little heated. I had people kind of converging on my feed on Instagram, filling in comment boxes, very angry with me.
Yeah.
But what I saw was people saying, I'm struggling with this. I'm on this diet and this is what's happening. Elevated blood sugar, low thyroid, my hair's falling out. I have no energy. I'm gaining weight or I'm not losing weight. And the response from the leadership, from these, the top influencers, we're going to call them, the doctors and all of the coaches, was you didn't do it right. You must be cheating. You need to carnivore harder. You just need to eat more fat. These were the actual responses. You just didn't do it right. That's impossible. You couldn't possibly be having that response.
Yeah.
You didn't do it. One of them was actually toward a doctor, and this other doctor, who I know I've interviewed, took screenshots of her counter saying, oh, look, she's got artificial sweetener. Oh, look, there's alcohol. There's a bottle of wine on her back counter. She must be drinking again. That's why she had these issues, not because the carnivore diet is having this negative impact on her physiology, which she'd been doing. She's a medical doctor, carnivore for 10 years. She said 6 years in, she started having issues. She added carbs in. This is what happened. She shares that. It explodes on her. I'm like, oh, wait. So there's no possible way someone could have a negative outcome with this diet over a period of years. You're saying that they just did it wrong?
Yeah.
That sparked a little bit of a pushback.
That's
Huge red flag. That's where the ideology becomes more important than the outcome. And as soon as that happens, we've lost sight of who we're trying to help and how, and what we're trying to change.
Yeah.
And when the ideology is the mantra and it takes precedence over people and outcomes, that's a big problem.
That is a huge problem.
That's dangerous.
It is.
That's the danger. Me saying I'm doing an experiment. Here's what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. This is what I'm looking at. Here are my outcomes. This is what I saw. And I wouldn't do this long term. This is where I pivoted to for maintenance.
Yep.
Now we have a construct that says you can try this. Here, if you wanted this, try this. And we have nuance. Yeah. And you can personalize it. Or say, don't do it at all and just stick to this. Here's a nice middle road. Now we have information that someone can actually use and personalize. Not one size fits all. Do it this way. You did it wrong.
Yeah.
Carnivore harder.
The nuances, yes.
Well, that's the problem with, that's what I feel like is the problem with like the online fitness world is like, you'll see, like, I've even seen it where like there's a little video, Arnold Schwarzenegger's teaching somebody something in the gym.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, he's doing it wrong because it's like, hey man.
Oh, his form.
Look at the results that Arnold Schwarzenegger had. Yeah. And that worked for him, his body type. And he even preaches on that. Like, hey, look, this is what I did.
His
I got
rows
results.
are not optimally.
But like, but a different body, a different, like
but,
everyone responds different. And I think that everyone's looking for the way, not realizing that any way is a way. And there's different approaches. There are better, there are worse. There's reasons why. There's proof.
Well, there's fundamentals, right? Like
and,
intensity.
Yeah. And it's
you're going to need some kind of form of
intensity. But to me,
intensity.
it's weird how people will go, this is what I did. This is how I did it. And they'll tell you, you did it wrong. Well, huh?
Yeah.
how does that work?
No, I agree. That's, it's not a one size fits all, right?
And we're looking at a snapshot of one point where it's like he made, let's just use that for his example. He may have done it that way for 6 weeks and then shifted to a different technique. Right? We don't train the same thing in the same way with the same level of weight, of rep in the same rep range with this particular approach. Yeah. We're using this for a period of time to get to to address this movement or these muscles in a slightly different way. Yeah. And so it's a snapshot. It's not he did it this way forever for 30 years.
Right.
So that's where it's kind of a we have to critical thinking is really important and really in a deficit.
It really is. Unfortunately, I don't see it getting any better, but we can always hope. Zane, we are almost out of time here. Okay. I want to ask you the final question here. When fitness is done right, what kind of man does it make?
That's a big question.
Yes.
That's I think our idea of fitness should shift from like the 25, 35-year-old to the, you said, like, I think I'm dealing now with people 40 to 60 who have responsibilities and jobs, and their idea of fitness isn't so they can strut around on the beach and at the bars and to have, it's not about the six pack anymore. It's about health. And so it's about being able to show up. And so it's a guy that can show up in any room, not just the gym. He's showing up there and he's resilient. He's metabolically flexible so he can handle the demands that his life requires of him, the stress that his life requires of him in every aspect. When properly supported with the right diet and with recovery, like we talked about, we've got cortisol under control and his thyroid supported and his sex hormone production supported. Now he has hormonal balance and he has emotional range where anything stressor comes in, he can handle it without it triggering, without it being an emotional taxation. Because he's balanced hormonally, he can handle more stressful situations like a man.
Yeah.
And resilience for the long haul, for the 40s, for the 50s, for the 60s, for the 70s, that long-term vision for, I'm not just thinking about, like we talked about, the summer vacation. I'm thinking about how do I keep showing up fit, independent physically, and able to really care for the people who have been put in my sphere, long term, for decades. That's what it is.
Yeah, I love it, Zane. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. We loved having you here.
Appreciate
excellent,
it.
man. Full of information. Loved it. We'll have to have you again. So
Thank you.
excellent. Thank
Appreciate
you so
John.
much.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.